Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo, to Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, we got some good news, okay? It's nice to get some good news in the offseason. The Chargers, in their situation with Austin Ekeler, it seems that they have reached an agreement. The Chargers are handing this man an extension in and around $1.75 million, thus putting to rest a lot of the speculation and drama that we had this offseason with Austin Ekeler. The cut, the trade. If you guys been living under a rock and you did not know, Austin Ekeler had requested a trade months ago because he wanted to get paid more. The man went out there and scored like 20 touchdowns just about in back-to-back season. He wanted to get some more money, and rightfully so. And at this point, a lot of Chargers fans were freaking out, myself included. What are the Chargers going to do? Are we going to be trading Austin Ekeler in and around the draft? Are we going to have to be letting go of him? Are we going to hand him that extension? Well, in the end, the Chargers do throw in some incentives in there to keep Austin Ekeler happy and hopefully set him up for a pretty nice 2023 season in order to help his chances at getting another contract in 2024. Will it be with the Chargers? I don't know. We can always hope. Austin Ekeler, obviously a fan favorite, a player in terms of being a Chargers fan that I'm never going to forget, from undrafted to one of the best, fantasy football players of all time. I'm rooting for Austin Ekeler, and I hope, on top of the incentives that the Chargers have just given him, that he finds success even through the later years of his career where a lot of running backs tend to find a difficult time finding homes. And I think Austin Ekeler could end up being one of those exceptions. But if you're a Chargers fan, you got to ask yourself, what are we doing in terms of our run game this season? What are we doing in terms of setting up ourselves for the future at the running back position? And if you're brand new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, what are your plans going forward in helping this run game, which needs a lot of help going into 2023. So we're going to talk about all of that today. We're going to talk about free agents. We're going to talk about 2024 NFL draft prospects at the running back position to kind of help ourselves plan forward at the running back position, just in case the Chargers do move on from Austin Ekeler in 2023. Also kind of give a nice preview of what Austin Ekeler could look like this season, because again, the table is set. Ekeler needs a big year, and I think the Chargers could help him oblige. So before we do get started, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. If you guys want to join the best fantasy platform on the web, use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. A great way to support the channel and have some fun along the way. With that, let's get into this. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action. The Austin Ekeler situation dissected, right? Looked into. How do we want to word this? I just kind of want to talk about Austin Ekeler, his potential for the 2023 season, as well as what the Chargers could be doing at running back this year to help themselves in their run game, as well as plan forward for maybe life past and Austin Ekeler, who has really just been an icon of this team on offense. The man going out there scoring ridiculous amounts of touchdowns. I would like to see some kind of plan formulated in terms of keeping similar production going into even 2024. But for right now, all we can say is that Ekeler is back, right? Again, the trade and cut drama is over. $2 million in incentives. Great news for the Chargers and its fans. We know what the future, it maybe look uncertain past this season, but for now, we do have our unquestioned running back one again. So speaking of Austin Ekeler, let's talk a little bit about his 2023 outlook, because I know there's going to be a lot of fans out there, especially, let's say, fantasy football fans, right, watching this video like, hey, director, are we going back in on the Austin Ekeler train? Are we doing the Austin Ekeler option again this year? Maybe you're in a keeper, et cetera, et cetera. What does 2023 look like in terms of his production? Well, spoiler alert, I'm going to say it's looking pretty dang good, okay, because of what's been set forth. The table has been set forth, right, for him to have another pretty good season. It's one that Austin Ekeler honestly needs to have. He's going to be looking to stack his portfolio as much as possible going into 2023 and past that into 2024, I should say, to better his chances at a new contract next season. Because let's remember, Austin Ekeler, who is turning, I think, 28, might already be 28 this season. It doesn't look great past that age if you're a running back in the NFL, and for many other positions in the NFL, might I add. And to grab another extension at that age is pretty difficult. If you can go out there and continue to prove, this tour of dominance, especially when it comes to scoring, maybe Austin Ekeler does stand a chance at getting a pretty decent contract going into next season, but he's really going to have to throw down the gauntlet this year in order to continue, let's say, proving the consistency of how effective he is in and around, let's say, the goal line or just scoring situations as a whole. Now, again, if you're Austin Ekeler, that's your goal. If you're the Chargers, I do have to imagine they're going to happily help him out in those regards, right? They're going to be looking to feature him as much as possible while he is still on the roster. Because let's not forget, the Chargers, with so many seasons with Austin Ekeler, they know how to deploy this man. They know exactly how to use an Austin Ekeler to win football games, to put up touchdowns that result in winning football games. And with 38 total touchdowns under his belt over the last 2 seasons, again, the Chargers are going to want to continue that tour as much as possible. Just because there might have been some disagreements this season in terms of money, just because we don't really know what's going to happen past 2023, doesn't mean the Chargers don't want to use what they have right now. Something that they know has been working the past couple of seasons. That's Austin Ekeler, really just kind of that missile, that centerpiece of the offense outside of, Justin Herbert. If you're going to be putting up points, if you're putting up touchdowns, Austin Ekeler right now is still your best option. And so long as he's on the roster, I do expect the Chargers to continue utilizing him just that way. Okay, so if you're a fantasy football player, I would say absolutely, if you have the option to get Austin Ekeler, especially if you're in a redraft league, this is definitely still a good league, or still a good year to go after an Austin Ekeler, because in the end, the kind of skill set that he brings to the table, especially in terms of receiving yards, if you're in PPR, absolutely go even trade for this man if you can. It's something that's coveted throughout the entire league. So let's say even you're in a keeper, you have the option to keep him next season. If Austin Ekeler does move on from the Chargers and goes somewhere else, that receiving ability will still keep his value, at least in my opinion, manageably high, right? Still pretty dang high. But yeah, I think good things are in the stars for Austin Ekeler this season, especially when you start factoring in how this offense is going to improve. Because yes, last season, despite Austin Ekeler putting up, like 18 touchdowns, the Chargers offense still needed a lot of help. It still needed some, room for improvement. And I think this season, we're absolutely going to see that. With brand new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, who was brought in from the Cowboys, I think Austin Ekeler could still have a very solid year. And he's going to play a bit of a factor here, okay? Let's play both sides of the coin here, though, because, again, there are some things that a new offense can bring that takes away from a star player like an Austin Ekeler. Maybe the touches are a little bit more limited. Maybe the Chargers do decide to push, their wide receivers forward a bit more in terms of targets. That's exactly, what Kellen Moore is going to want to do, especially now that they got, Quentin Johnston and Darius Davis. That might eat into Ekeler's production a little bit in terms of his receiving. But on the flip side, we know that Kellen Moore is going to be pushing the narrative of improving the run game, right? If you've been watching the Cowboys for, several years while Kellen Moore's been part of that organization, the run game has been pretty dang important. Honestly, it's been very effective, kind of under the radar effective, and probably a big reason why their passing game has been so good. That's an aspect that could help Austin Ekeler, right? As well as having more threats downfield. We've talked a lot about Quentin Johnston and his effect on the game, his effect for the Chargers offense. That should help, Austin Ekeler see more space underneath, right? With DBs having to back off a little bit, maybe linebackers backing off a little bit, you will see maybe a little bit more space for Austin Ekeler to see more of those opportunities for, let's say, go-ahead touchdowns, right? Getting him out there in open space, finding, those extra yards. Austin Ekeler's as good as anybody in the NFL at that, and if he has more space to do so, it should help him out. But again, there's a little bit of give and take here when you're bringing in a new offense. So what are you guys asking me? If you're asking me, director, what do you think, in 2023 is going to look like for Austin Ekeler? He's going to be putting up 20 touchdowns again. I would expect, let's say, a slight decline, right? At age 28, with all the incentives in the world, I still think that Austin Ekeler is going to be a very dominant piece in the NFL in terms of as a weapon, a scoring weapon. Will he be as good as last year or the year before? I think there's a shot at it, especially, again, with the incentives that have been put forth. But I could easily see Austin Ekeler post in and around, let's say, 1,400 total yards, 12 to 15 touchdowns. Still one of the best in the league in terms of scoring, and still going to be one of the centerpieces of this Chargers offense, despite the situation going into 2024. Okay, so with that, let's start talking a little bit more about planning forward. Okay, and the biggest reason why I'm doing this video now instead of like waiting until the end of the season or next year is because I do think in terms of the running offense, the running game, and planning forward for that, it does start this season in 2023 in a lot of different ways. Okay, so as we mentioned, Kellen Moore, he's going to be looking at this team's production in terms of our ground game, and he's going to want to improve that based on what we saw last season, right? The Chargers just weren't very good at running the football, which is kind of crazy to say because of how good Austin Ekeler is. It's just the Chargers didn't really have very much in terms of talent to complement what he brought to the table, right? Austin Ekeler, you want to get him out there in space. You want to, run him on the outside. Obviously, you're going to want to throw him the football underneath whenever you can. But when it comes to just turning out those tough yards, having a different style, pace, running back, Chargers really just didn't have anybody. And even if they tried to deploy something like that, they were more often than not as efficient as I'm sure they were hoping to be, right? And Kellen Moore coming into this system, taking a look at the run game, wanting to improve that, that's going to influence what the Chargers do this year in 2023, right? More heavily next season, in my opinion, right, in terms of what the Chargers can do to add to the roster in terms of talent. Maybe start, setting the table this year as to where they need help specifically, but I do think it does start this season. Now, this year, I'd hope to see more involvement from our existing backs because that automatically starts giving you an idea of what you can build on, right? The existing backs, of course, being your featured back, Austin Ekeler, who's going to see the vast majority of touches, obviously. And I also think the Chargers would be very wise to start taking a deeper look at some of his backups, though, right? You got Joshua Kelly, who I think is going to see his fair share of touches. I think he's absolutely earned it. He's been one of the better Chargers, backups on this roster. But we also have to remember that not just Austin Ekeler is going to be seeing a contract here this season. It's also going to be Joshua Kelly. Both of our top two biggest, best running backs on the roster could be looking at needing a new contract if they're going to remain on the Chargers in 2024. And that could determine what the Chargers do even this year, right? Do the Chargers want to see Joshua Kelly as that featured guy going forward? Are they going to give him the opportunity to prove that this year? Are they going to want to see, how much they can squeeze in terms of value by re-signing him to, let's say, a cheaper contract? Maybe not even in the Austin Ekeler stratosphere, but something that's doable on the Chargers team going forward, even as an RB2. Who knows? I think the opportunity needs to be there for these guys to really prove to the Chargers what they are going forward, right? And for this, again, I think the Chargers, in utilizing Austin Ekeler and Joshua Kelly, that's on the surface already very wise. But I would also hope that the Chargers heavily focus on identifying their talent of young players on the roster, because the Chargers do have some young running backs with a lot of potential. In particular, I want to see the Chargers really focus on Isaiah Spiller and Xander Horvath. You guys know how much I love Xander Horvath. Okay, at this point, it's getting creepy. I might be seeing some sort of, restraining order in the future. But till then, let's talk a little bit more about Xander Horvath, because again, I do feel that his involvement this season, as we edge closer and closer to planning forward with Austin Ekeler, what are we going to do in this situation? I think Xander Horvath could be a very important part of that puzzle. All right, so as you see here, Xander Horvath, the incredible, the amazing, going up against the Niners, had himself a good game that week. What are we harping about, director, in terms of getting Xander Horvath as more of a featured part of this football team? Well, I've said this since the moment he was drafted. To me, Xander Horvath should be something special if the team he goes to properly utilizes his talent and recognizes what he can offer as kind of like a do-it-all kind of guy, right? Watching this guy run with the fluidity and power he possessed, even in college, that's something that's unique, right? That's something that you see more from these hugely dominant, let's say, tight ends, right? Or these running backs that do play a role in terms of moving the football in difficult situations. I feel like Horvath is one of these sleeping giants on the roster that has yet to see, like this untapped potential, this untapped power that I have a sneaking suspicion the Chargers kind of see. They're just kind of waiting to see how they want to roll it out, right? Because a lot of people, if you're a saying director, what do you see in a Xander Horvath? A lot of people, myself included, kind of see this like Mike Allstott kind of style to him, right? In terms of style, right? Of course, is he going to be as good as an NFL all-time great fullback? Probably not, no. But they can be used in very similar ways, right? They can be used in ways that very much so mirror the strengths and weaknesses of what we've seen from the past. And I think that's why I get excited when I see a Xander Horvath on the roster and all the situations I can imagine him becoming useful. For one, I think we saw a little preview of his utility last season, early in the regular season, right? When it really mattered, when you're throwing down the gauntlet in these games, they count. The Chargers did look to Xander Horvath very early. In the first 2 games of the season, Horvath was heavily involved at the goal line as a receiving option, which is kind of insane to think about because you got this young stud. He's huge. He's got a lot of power behind him. You would expect his involvement in and around the goal line to be handing it off to the fullback. No, they wanted to get him involved as a receiver. And I feel like he executed the play action perfectly with Justin Herbert, right? Scoring in back-to-back games to open the season. He didn't just score against the Raiders in week 1. He also scored versus the Chiefs in week 2. It almost felt like a trend was starting, right? He almost started getting the attention of these fantasy football players. Like, who's this Xander Horvath guy? 2 back-to-back weeks with scoring touchdowns from the fullback position. What are we thinking here? What are we thinking here? Well, after that, starting week 3 and beyond, poof, he disappeared. And it might have been due to, I think people mentioned there was a drop in a critical moment. These things happen in your rookie season. He was just kind of cut off. It felt like his rookie potential season in terms of, man, this guy's really coming onto the scene as a 7th round guy. It felt like it was cut short, right? But nonetheless, we did see a little bit of a sample size to open the season in games that counted, that the Chargers obviously felt comfortable trusting him in those situations. And this is something I hope to see the Chargers do a lot more this season. Because of, Horvath's excellent, athletic ability, I feel like he should be a strong receiving option for the Chargers going forward. Much like Kyle Juszczyk of the San Francisco 49ers, I think a similar skill set exists there in terms of bringing him in those situations where you want to mix it up a little bit. I think he's the perfect weapon for that. But something, again, I hope to see a lot more of this season is going to be just straight up carries for Xander Horvath. And I'm not just talking, short yardage situations, which is kind of, an obvious must at this point. I want to see this big guy churn out these, tough yards when really called upon for those situations. I'm talking more about when the Chargers want to mix it up, right? Attack the middle of the line, right? Sometimes you face an opponent where the outside, these guys, they got the edge clamped up. Austin Ekeler's not finding space. Maybe the middle of that line's a little squishy, right? And you're going to want to attack the middle, portion of that. Who are you going to, throw into those situations? You could throw in Austin Ekeler. At times, he can be very good there. You could throw in an Isaiah Spiller. Now, I feel a little bit more comfortable throwing in the best guy in our roster for that situation. In my opinion, that's Xander Horvath, right? Attack the middle of that line. The ball is handed off to Horvath as our physical back. I think good things happen. So I think it could be our best in-house option if the Chargers want to run that, again, the Zeke to Pollard kind of combo. Again, they're not like similar backs, but they kind of are utilized that way, right? Austin Ekeler, the receiving guy. Same thing with Pollard, kind of be that do it all kind of guy, and then you hand it off to the bigger guy to turn out those tough yards. I think Horvath could be that for us. Okay, but we've talked a lot about Horvath on this channel. I'm gonna try. We'll change our name to the Director Xander Horvath Football going here in the next couple of weeks. All right, let's talk about the next guy here in Isaiah Spiller, right? And again, vastly important to me for the Chargers to give both of these guys a decent amount of opportunities this season, and not just these guys, and maybe some of the undrafted guys. Maybe we do find another Austin Ekeler, that's undrafted this season. Maybe we do see a bit of a uptick in production from guys like Larry Roundtree. I think though your odds at bringing in a young guy that could turn a corner and be a more featured weapon in the future is Xander Horvath and of course Isaiah Spiller. Now, a lot of people, yes, disappointed Isaiah Spiller last season, right? And a lot of people thinking, Director, have you given up on this guy? We harped him so much coming into the NFL. His rookie, selection was one that was so hype with the fan base, and then he kind of disappeared. I will say his rookie season was extremely underwhelming, right? He ended with something like 2.3 yards per carry average. It was bad. It was very bad. It honestly felt like every time we handed the football off to Spiller that he was still kind of, in those rookie jitters, right? We didn't see a lot of the flash that we saw of him in college, and that's something that we need to see going forward as the Chargers running back room becomes a little bit more uncertain in the future. But a lot of that stuff that worried me, again, is stuff that you see with a lot of rookies, right? I think the running back position sometimes gets skewed because a lot of the times the guys that mean something, that become something, you see it very obviously in the rookie season. But that's not always the case there, right? I still think the potential exists for Spiller to be a very nice runner for the Chargers, right? And I think the Chargers, at the very least, should give him proper, even let's say preseason carries to analyze him better. We need to know what he offers the squad going into next season so we can properly identify a role for him. At the very worst, I think Isaiah Spiller's future is very solid in terms of a receiving option. And this is something I've talked a little bit about in my recent videos. The Chargers, this team loves to throw the football to the running back. Who knows why, but it's something they've been very good at for the past several seasons, mainly because of Austin Ekeler. But even before that, I think that's kind of the future of what I see in Isaiah Spiller, right? That's something I think he showed well last season, even in limited looks and opportunities and touches, right? The Chargers are always going to want something available in terms of help from the receivers, from the halfback position, right? Getting that kind of production. And I think Spiller should really hone in on that trait as he moves closer to getting maybe, let's say, more snaps in 2024. Be that guy out there, right? That's really honing in on that route running from the running back position. That's really honing in on those hands from the running back position. I think that's giving him his best shot to be involved in 2024 and beyond. Do I still think that the potential for him as a runner still exists? Absolutely. But I think as far as what the Chargers value, his skill set as a receiver is something that's going to help propel him forward. And I do think that's something that exists for him going forward in the future, especially as the Chargers might be moving on from Austin Ekeler in 2024. Okay. But realistically, even though we do have some nice in-house options, the Chargers may re-sign Josh Kelly. The Chargers may find that spark in Isaiah Spiller that they were looking for. I still think realistically, the Chargers are going to be looking for something else, right, going into 2024. If we don't have Austin Ekeler, who, let's be honest, at this point, unless something crazy happens, which I'm kind of hoping does, the Chargers may elect to move on from the 28 going 29 running back for something a little bit younger or different or cheaper, whatever. We have to be prepared for that. And I think where you kind of start is maybe with your free agents, okay? Outside of in-house options, I think the Chargers have a nice free agent market in front of them, including Austin Ekeler, right? We've seen in recent seasons some of the best talent at running back signing cheaper and cheaper deals. It's just kind of how the NFL has been viewing the position. I think it's something that Austin Ekeler's trying to combat, but it's going to be very tough, especially with some of the talent we're going to be seeing in 2023. You guys ready to see some of the names that I've plucked out of the air in terms of potential Chargers at the running back position next year? Again, premium talents out there, and we're seeing a lot of these guys sign stupid cheap contracts. This could be the area the Chargers turn to. Now, some of the top available free agents, in my opinion, again, still Austin Ekeler, still holding out hope for that. Maybe the Chargers work out a 2-year deal, something short, where we can keep that consistency on the roster. That's still my number one preference. But outside of that, you guys got guys like Joe Mixon, who could be a free agent. Again, a lot of these guys could end up getting extensions with their teams, but then again, maybe not, right? A lot of football organizations moving on from these, established running backs for younger talent. Maybe Joe Mixon's available out there on the market. I know there was some drama behind Josh Jacobs this last season. He ended up being tagged or something like that, right? He could be a nice option for the Chargers. He's slowly developed into a very nice, kind of bruiser. I think the Chargers would appreciate that kind of talent. Then you got guys like Tony Pollard, right? Let's say that, Kellen Moore is still a Charger at this time next season. Of course, you're going to be considering a Tony Pollard. He might even sign a contract cheaper than the existing Austin Ekeler contract, right? And if that's the case, and you're Kellen Moore, I think it's kind of a no-brainer, right? But that's if, again, the Dallas Cowboys let him walk, which is something that could technically happen. There was a whole bunch of drama this last offseason about Saquon Barkley, who I think was also tagged. That could be an option for the Chargers next season, right? Unless he gets an extension, he'll be a free agent. Bit of a riskier one, in my opinion. I don't really like the injury history there, but one of the best talents in the NFL, by far. Then you got guys like Jonathan Taylor, sneaky, right? Sneaky, another premium running back that could be hitting the market. I think the Colts re-sign him, but it's a possibility, right? It's going to affect the running back market. Then you got guys like A.J. Dillon. What are the Packers anymore? One of the weirdest football organizations I've ever seen year in and year out. Maybe they let A.J. Dillon walk crazily, and the Chargers scoop him up. Who knows? Or maybe they go absolutely bonkers and they say, you know what, we're trying to form a new identity. This guy's a little bit older, but he's kind of the direction we want to go. Let's start things off, kick things off as far as the Chargers, let's say, power run game era with the Derrick Henry, who could be a free agent. There was talk about this guy getting traded or even released this last season. It could still happen. Maybe the Chargers go after Derrick Henry. I don't know. And again, a lot of it depends on the money. I think the Chargers are one of those teams that really, really focus on the money when it comes to value at these positions. But with what we've seen from the running back position, anything's possible. If we're talking a little bit cheaper money, I think there's absolutely some options out there the Chargers could maybe look at in terms of value. I'll just kind of read some names. I don't have pictures for everybody, but, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he could maybe develop into a nice receiving option, right? I don't expect him to get a huge contract. J.K. Dobbins, right? If you kind of want to start looking at maybe more of a power game, not a bad option. Cam Akers, connections to L.A., he still has potential in my opinion. You got the guy we see on the screen here, Antonio Gibson, who started really hot and sort of fizzled out. Maybe the Chargers give him a second shot. And then maybe other deeper value options like a Dearness Johnson, who I do think is still going to be a free agent next season. These guys could be big for the Chargers, depending on what they're building in terms of their running game, right? So it's going to be a big year for the position, I think, in free agency. That's something I wanted to push the narrative forward. Even if a lot of these guys get re-signed to their previous teams, it's going to affect the market in terms of what you're paying these guys. And with what I've seen the past couple of seasons, the NFL and all of its franchise, all of its organizations, all its owners, whatever you want to call it, they've really not been budging in terms of paying this premium position, which is kind of crazy. And again, it makes sense. It's a strategy. It's a legitimate, method of thinking, because these guys, the wear and tear is very fast, very obvious, and the decline is very quick. But there are exceptions, right? And at the very end, at very minimum, you could be looking at some of these guys very, very cheap. And that's just something that, in terms of options for the Chargers, you have to think of. Again, I really hope that the Chargers focus in on Austin Ekeler, because, again, we know exactly what he is. I still think he'll have 2-3 really good seasons left under his belt at that point. But if they want to go cheap, if Ekeler doesn't want to budge, or whatever the case may be in terms of the money talk, there are going to be a lot of options via free agency. But more likely than not, if you're the Chargers, and again, money is kind of a big thing. Value is kind of a big thing with this team. If I were to predict what the Chargers are going to do, quite honestly, I think they're going to be looking towards the draft next season, right? Austin Ekeler possibly moving on, maybe going to a new team. Hopefully, again, just as a fan of the player, I hope he gets the money that he's looking for, even if it's not from the Chargers. The Chargers, in my opinion, are going to look for that value, and it's going to come, in my opinion, most likely through the draft. Now, if you guys remember, this last season, I felt that the 2023 draft class of running backs was pretty strong, right? Featuring a Bijan Robinson. That was one of our top picks, right, that we're hoping to fall to the Chargers. Ends up getting drafted super, super high. But in the end, a nice class of running backs. I think 2024 could end up being even better outside of Bijan Robinson. I think Bijan is going to be one of the best talents we've seen in a long time, and probably will stay that way as like the top dude. But in terms of just the vast amount of quality running backs coming into the league next season, potentially, I think this could be a very, very nice class as well. So some of the options the Chargers could chase next year are as such, and they, in my opinion, scream star potential, right? Guys that you can find between rounds 1 and let's say even 3, depending on how, obviously this next upcoming season shakes out before the draft. Some of my favorite guys to look at, Blake Corum out of Michigan. Right? A lot of people like Deuce Vaughn this last year. Well, let's say Deuce Vaughn times a million, right? This guy, again, small, 5'8", but kind of, again, I don't like comparing, players, especially in college, coming into the league with some of these all-time greats, but kind of reminds people of a Barry Sanders type runner, we'll say, right? Kind of that Barry shiftiness, has that power, even though he's a bit of a smaller dude. Yeah, he looks awesome. He could end up being the best coming into the league next season. Highly productive. I think 1,400 yards, 18 touchdowns. Kind of similar to an Austin Ekeler situation, right? A bit of a smaller guy, but very, very built. And the dude just scores touchdowns, right? Strong, shifty. He feels like a star in the making. I think, again, one of the of very many running backs I would be excited for the Chargers to add next season. What's another one? Will Shipley, Clemson, right? I would say, in my opinion, the top receiving option, if you're looking that way with the Chargers, right? Dominant hands, great route running for the position, fits the Chargers style. He's a guy that you could probably find in the late first, second, maybe even third round, depending on how people view his skills, or especially how his season goes this year. Very nice option there. Braylon Allen, another one of my favorite options if the Chargers want to start moving in this direction of like a power back. Huge dude, 6'2", like 240 something pounds, maybe 230, maybe 230 something pounds. Very big guy, right? Huge playmaker, great balance. He's got striking short yardage power, right? Dude's a beast, a physical beast. He major bell cow vibes is what I get when watching a Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin, right? That would be an awesome option. Who knows where, like, I would say all these guys between rounds 1 and 3 would be an awesome piece going into the NFL and the pros. Another guy I really love, Raheem Rocket Sanders, Arkansas, right? Another enormous back, 6'2", 230-ish pounds. Extremely well-rounded. I would say, again, maybe, Braylon Allen more of your pure bruiser. This guy's more of a well-rounded kind of guy, right? Some great production through the air, even given his size. Looks like he's going to be a great short yardage option. Just all around very nice back, right? And he's got sneaky great speed for his size, too. Probably one of my favorite options next season. He looks like an NFL stud, an absolute stud. Keep an eye on Sanders. And then finally, I would say at this point, maybe the top consensus, like best back coming in, hopefully to the draft next season, is Traven Henderson at Ohio State. Looks like a dominant NFL back off the bat, right? He's fast, flashes excellent moves to get into space, great hands, ability to get open from the backfield. This guy's awesome, awesome, awesome talent. And it's one of very many. I think, again, last season's running back class, very solid. This upcoming season, I think in terms of quantity will be a lot better. I think some of your top guys, how far away are they from Bijan Robinson? I still think Bijan is better, but some of these guys, very, very good. Could get close, right? I wouldn't say too close, but could get close in terms of that kind of potential. And if you're the Chargers and you're going into next season with that need, I think you'll be able to fill it through the draft. And again, just kind of feeling out the team and how they value at the specific positions like running back and linebacker kind of feels like the most obvious thing to me. So you guys can let me know, maybe even some of your favorite running back options possibly coming into the season next year. But to wrap this up, the Austin Ekeler situation right now, all I can tell you guys is the first and foremost in the foreground, I want Chargers fans to be excited for this season. Okay, this year we have our RB1. This year we've got the guy who scored close to 40 touchdowns in the past 2 seasons combined. We got a superstar stud. The position looks good, right? But we can't help but feel that cloud, right, hovering over us as to what's going to happen in the future. If I were to give you guys my spitball best guess as to what's going to happen, the Chargers are going to ride Austin Ekeler this season. He's going to have, in my opinion, a pretty good year, a very good year. But next season, I think the money talks are going to hit the table again, and unfortunately, I don't know if the Chargers are going to be able to meet the kind of standards or demands that Austin Ekeler wants, and that's going to force the Chargers to part ways. At this point, they will have looked at some of their backups. Maybe they like what they see in terms of RB2, receiving options like Spiller, short yardage guys maybe like Horvath. I think, honestly, they'll go into the draft with kind of a need there. And I think they're going to find a guy that they're very happy with because I do see a lot of nice talent going into next season, potentially a lot of nice talent going into next season. I think the Chargers draft the running back of the future in 2024, and we kind of start fresh there. But a lot of it has to do with Kellen Moore, right? And how he views, how he views the running back room this season, what he sees from the position right now, and how he wants to plan ahead going forward. Because again, his version of the Chargers running offense in 24 could literally just be this guy. And that's it, right? But I do think, again, if I'm a Chargers fan, I've watched this team for a long time, I think they're going to go in maybe starting looking for rookies this season. So that's just something to keep your head out, above water for. Just kind of keep your eyes peeled for some of the best, or better running backs this season. And during the college season, the Chargers could end up having a need at that position towards the end of the year. So let me know what you guys think of the Austin Ekeler situation. I'm sure as heck excited to see him play this year. I hope there's a version of the Chargers where maybe he remains with the team for the next couple of seasons. But even if not, I'm rooting for the player because he absolutely, with almost 40 touchdowns, deserves to continue that trend going forward with the money I feel like he deserves as well, even if it doesn't come with the Chargers, which would be painful. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you liked what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay in frosty. We're all rooting for Austin Ekeler, man. Let's see another 20 touchdown season. That'll be to put a big smile on my face.